Hello and welcome to the Uncultured Nerd Show. My name is Maeve and I'm an uncultured nerd. What does that mean? Just as it sounds, I'm a nerd without culture. Basically, I identify greatly with the nerd community in terms of being antisocial, being really into niche stuff, and being extremely unpopular in middle school. However, I have some enormous blind spots when it comes to a lot of important nerd staples. I've never seen the original Star Wars trilogy all the way through, I haven't watched or read Game of Thrones, and biggest of all, I do not play any kind of video games. My mother did not allow video game consoles in our house, mostly because there was no way we could afford one, and also because she already called the TV the idiot box, and she wasn't about to give us an excuse to interact with it more. The only games of video variety we were allowed to play were games on the PBS Kids website, or, as a special treat on weekends, my beloved Webkins. And if you think I abandoned my pets in childhood, you are sorely mistaken. I still log on every day to take care of my 18 pets. Gracie, Coco, Lizzie, Trinity, Tweety, Flopsy, Crystal, Blizzard, Coro, Skysong, Stillwater, Pikea, Quoba, Spot, Summer, Iggy, Aslan, and the newest addition, Rosetta, who I adopted in July. But my point is, I was not, have not, and probably will never be a traditional gamer. Recently, my boss did give me a classic Nintendo with the games programmed in. I have played a couple and particularly enjoyed Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, and Mega Man X, so I am no longer a gaming console virgin. However, I still have no clue about modern gaming and also have never played in a 3D world. I am aware of many games that are popular and also that a lot of games have had very successful and very terrible adaptations. However, I just happened to have picked up Peacock on a student discount recently, and guess what popped up under recommended a couple days after I uploaded my last One Piece review? And thus, the next idea for Uncultured Nerd came to pass. So here's what I know about Five Nights at Freddy's. It's basically what would happen if Chuck E. Cheese's animatronics were alive and tried to kill you. I also happen to have watched what many consider to be a rip-off of the idea, despite the writer saying otherwise, Wiley's Wonderland, which I honestly really liked, and I'm curious to see just how many similarities there are between these two. Although I am sorry, Josh Hutcherson, you're great and all, but you cannot compete with Nicolas Cage. And that's not an insult, that's just a fact for everyone on Earth. None of us will ever match his glorious glory. But like I said, I basically only know that the game is about killer animatronics, and I also have no knowledge of gaming in general, so I'm going to see if this works as an enjoyable film for a completely uncultured nerd with no knowledge of the source material. So without further ado, let's get into the Five Nights at Freddy's movie with this episode's Unhinged Recap! So this guy is working the graveyard shift at this creepy place and is running from something through the vents until it looks like he's safe, and obviously he is, because it's not like this is a horror movie, and oh what a surprise, welcome to the Saw chair. And hello, actually good opening credits, leading to the introduction of our main dude Mike, who struggles to take care of his artistic little sister Abigail while working as a not-so-great security guard because he beats up first and asks questions never. And because of this little outburst, Shaggy the job finder dude is having trouble finding any more jobs for Mike, but he may just have one that could work, but Mike doesn't work nights, and I'm sure nothing can ever change that. Mike gets home to the babysitter and Abigail, who is fitting right into the weird psychic Stephen King Child Club and is really pushing every button Mike has. Think Lilo and Nami, but creepy. And speaking of creepy, Mike dreams about the time his little brother Garrett was kidnapped when he was supposed to be watching him, and he blames himself for that. The next morning, Mike is at the doctor's with this bitch aunt who wants to take Abigail for the government check, but luckily the doctor lady knows Abigail is better off with Mike, but tells him he needs a steady job if he wants to keep her. And how convenient, I believe a steady job was just offered yesterday, and off to night one. While it's the appropriate amount of creepy, there's nothing too bad, just a couple of jump scares, not enough to keep Mike awake, and he returns to Dreamland with some new visitors. Wonder if they have anything to do with this new place. Anyway, Mike returns home safe, and turns out Abigail's babysitter is a backstabber, and she and her brother are working for the bitch aunt to get custody of Abigail and plan to vandalize the restaurant so Mike will get arrested. Night 2, Mike returns and once again falls asleep and dreams about these weird-ass kids who are now a little bit more stabby. Luckily, the horror-styled electricity wakes Mike up before we learn anything, and this police lady Vanessa is outside. She's quite nice, kind of too nice, and seems to know everything about the place since she went there as a kid and wants to introduce Mike to all of the definitely not creepy mascots. And exposition dump, I guess this place closed in the 80s because 5 children were murdered and their bodies were never found. What a great first conversation right after meeting someone. After telling him that no security guard ever stays, Vanessa leaves, and that's the end of night 2. Mike heads out while the hired goons get ready to rough up the place, leading to hands down the best scene, cause murder! This guy gets his face eaten by a cupcake, and this guy gets beaten up by a bunny, this dude gets PG-13 to death by a fox, and Trader Babysitter gets by far the best death in the movie. Back at home, Abigail finds the papers, and it's very clear she does not want to live with bitch aunt, while Vanessa shows up after finding the torn apart restaurant, and for some reason isn't going to file a police report before hearing Mike's side of the story. Very convenient for Mike. And exposition dump number 2, turns out Mike didn't want to work nights because he spends every night going inside the same dream memory trying to figure out who took his brother, and now he thinks Freddy's is somehow connected because of the group of kids who are now turning up in his dreams. And that's good enough for Vanessa to not report anything anything and off to night 3. But since obviously the babysitter isn't showing up tonight, Abigail is tagging along. Mike cleans up, then returns to the dream while Abigail explores and discovers definitely not creepy mascots very quickly. Inside the dream, Mike talks to the new kid who draws a rabbit and seems to know who took Mike's brother, but before anything is revealed, Mike is woken up by Abby's scream. But haha, fake out, they were just tickling her and are actually really, really good friends. They are also not killer animatronics, but vessels for the ghost children from Mike's dream. Well, obviously. Mike underreacts like a champ, and they go home when Mike realizes the animatronics are the friends Abigail is always drawing and talking about. But it seems like spending more time with them is getting her to open up a bit, and there's a chance she can talk to them about the brothers kidnapped. So back the next night they go. And look who's waiting, weird police lady who it turns out knew about everything this whole time, so it's probably time for her to answer some questions, or let's just build a fort. Cue fun building montage! Mike finds out apparently these animatronics are also deadly to wear. I'm sure that won't lead to anything in the future, and Vanessa continues to be all mysterious and obviously knows more than she's letting on, but before Mike can get some answers, Abby has a shocking accident, and Vanessa threatens Mike to never bring Abby back again. Oh my god, girl, just say what's going on. But I guess he'll listen because he won't take Abby back the next night, but since Trader Babysitter is at 50% capacity, Mike is forced to call in Bitch on to look after Abby, which Abby mistakes as Mike giving her up, so she refuses to come out of her room while Mike goes back to work and continues exploring his dreams. Although this time it seems his brother hasn't been kidnapped and the family is happy again, turns out it's all due to the ghost children who offer Mike a chance to stay in the happy dream every night if he gives them Abby. At first it seems like he's going to do it, but hell no, he's not giving up his little sister and rejects the offer, but they don't like that, and after some scratching and stabbing, it's the saw chair again. Luckily, Mike manages to free himself and sees what happens to the group from before, then tries to get out of the building, but those dream injuries really slow him down and Foxy Robot is hot on the trail. Meanwhile, not Freddy Child Ghost shows up to get Abby while Bitch Aunt gets what she deserves, and they take what I assume is not even the weirdest cab ride this driver's had that night. Mike wakes up to Vanessa treating his stabs, and finally she's given up some answers. Apparently those 5 children who went missing were never found because it's not just their souls in those animatronics, it's their bodies too! And they want to make Abby like them so that they can keep her as a permanent friend. Also, they only kill because the man who murdered them still has influence over what they do and is also the person who kidnapped Garrett. But how does Vanessa know all this? Cause dun dun dun, she's his daughter! And she can't go with Mike to save Abby cause Murder Guy will be there tonight and he still has control over her. But she will tell him how to get in and how to take down the animatronics. Luckily, Mike shows up in time and with a few well-placed shocks, Abby is saved, but hey, this movie is about killer animatronics, not friendly ones, so a little creeping around and more electrocution until final boss alert! Here comes the yellow rabbit who is immune to tasers and also speaks for some reason, and that reason is it's Shaggy the job finder guy! And he has convinced the ghost children that he's their best friend and they do whatever he says, including getting ready to kill Mike, and even Vanessa's last-minute rescue won't be enough to save him or her. But wait! Here comes the power of truth! He's not your friend, he literally murdered you, and now thanks to Abby's grand, we have visual confirmation, which is enough for the ghost to turn on Shaggy, activate the trap thing from before, and off-screen murder the gosh darn heck out of him. And with all that violence Abby has now experienced, she obviously starts becoming a more open and sociable person with a bright future in school. And Mike often visits Vanessa as she recovers in the hospital because apparently she's the reason they survive, even though she's obviously not, and Mike and Abby return to the happy life, and Abby hopefully will someday get to see her new friends. And with this little sequel bait of Shaggy not being quite dead yet, I'm sure that can be arranged. And that was the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Now, as an outsider of the game, strictly judging this as a movie, I liked it. It's a very unstable I liked it, because there are some things that are really good and some things that are just so frustrating. But let's start off with the positives. A small one right off the bat. These opening credits are awesome. I know opening credits died off for a reason, audiences just want to get to the show, but if you make them interesting, it's worth the wait. My personal favorite opening credits sequence is from Tintin, an extraordinarily underrated Spielberg movie based on one of my favorite comics of all time. And now, a big positive, the acting is pretty well done. Vanessa was a little iffy for me at first, but after she reveals her past, the rest of the performance does make a little bit more sense. Josh Hutcherson is a great lead. He's one of those rare child actor success stories, and while he's mainly known for the Hunger Games, every performance I've seen of his has been so great, and I think he actually is quite an underrated actor. I'm thinking of checking out this TV series he did called Future Man, where it looks like he gets to be a little bit more comedic with some badass undertones. Although, there was one moment, which is sort of the script and sort of the direction, but I did want to bring it up, that I just found really unintentionally funny. When he first sees the animatronics move, there should have been a much bigger freak out. At first I thought he was just in a state of shock, kind of like Mortimer at the end of Arsenic and Old Lace. Oh, speaking of, I was at my grandmother's recently, and there was a back-to-back showing of Arsenic and Old Lace with Cary Grant and Harvey with James Stewart, both of which are actually very enjoyable, and I highly recommend. Cary Grant is absolutely hilarious, and you will believe James Stewart has a 6'3" invisible rabbit as a best friend. But anyway, Mike does have a believable state of shock moment, which I thought would lead into a proper freakout, but instead he very quickly accepts it and helps them build a table fort the next day. Look, dude, I don't know what you're on, but I want some. Wait, I do do know what you're on. Well, still give me some. I'm getting distracted. My point is, Mike needed a little bit more of a freak out before joining in the fun build montage. But apart from that, he's very sympathetic throughout the whole movie, and even though he's obviously not the best caretaker for Abby, it's clear he's trying his best, and we're all rooting for them to succeed. Speaking of, this is a good little child actor. Her name is Piper Rubio, and it looks like this is the first big movie that she's ever been in, and I think it will lead to a good career. She's great at playing the misunderstood weird kid who isn't trying to be difficult, but she just doesn't understand that people don't see things the way that she sees them. The only thing I'll say, I think her scream maybe needed some dubbing just to make it a little bit more terrified. And oh my goodness, Matthew Lillard, you are here and you are amazing! I know I called his character Shaggy in the recap, but it is his most famous character which he continues to play, and seemingly he enjoys playing it because he's been doing it for 20 years, so I don't think he'll mind. But he also is a very, very good voice and screen actor who, like Josh Hutcherson, is very underrated. I think he does a great job playing creepy at first and then outright monster at the very end. However, and this is not his fault, it's really hard to look intimidating while standing in a yellow bunny suit. He is clearly giving it his all in this scene, and I believe the character believes he's terrifying and badass, but I think he should have either revealed himself, then put the mask back on immediately, or come out of the costume completely. Maybe it could have been like an Iron Man thing where it opens and he steps out and then the animatronics push him back in to trap him. I'm not sure, but the visual of Matthew Lillard's head sticking out of an oversized rabbit suit costume is just funny. And I know that might be the point. These are my very uncultured opinions, so don't listen to them, or do, I don't know. Moving on to another major positive, the practical animatronics. I can't tell you how thrilled I am that the animatronics were all in-camera effects. I'm sure some CGI was used here and there, but you can tell they are fully on set, fully built, and the actors are really interacting with them the whole time. Don't get me wrong, CGI can do some amazing things, but 100% photorealism 100% of the time is just not achievable yet, and I love that we get some awesome full-body puppet costumes. And they actually look incredible! They move real creepy, and I love the various signs of wear and tear, which increases as the bodies pile up. This guy was probably my favorite, and the one I found the creepiest. I don't know why, creepy singing is always gonna be terrifying to me, and both times this one got his chance to sing, it was especially bone-chilling. And now the biggest positive of them all, which I think elevated this film to an I liked it category and saved it from the trash pile of other video game adaptations. The direction and the editing. The majority of problems I have with this film are in the screenplay, and it takes a lot of hard work to elevate not amazing material. This is a great example of that hard work. Despite the flaws in the script, which we will get to, the visual horror, whenever it's on screen, is top-notch, and the way the reveals of the animatronics, whenever they turn up, are edited, is masterful. My focus in studying film production is cinematography and editing, so that is what I pick up on more and more as I get more experience in the field. I've worked on quite a few projects where the script was not the best, mostly because I wrote the scripts, but I always did my best to elevate those shortcomings through good visuals and compelling editing. I, of course, am not a professional by any means, but I am hoping to be, and these stupid videos are part of that road to get me there, so thank you, Professor, for allowing me to practice while talking about pointless nerd crap. Now, the acting, visuals, and directing is all very well handled. So what's the problem? Well, for starters, this really should have been rated R. This is clearly one of those horror movies that wanted so badly to be an R, but is required to be PG-13, so they had to make a lot of sacrifices with the gore. But even with the PG-13 rating, they did get away with quite a lot. The best scene in the movie by far was the murdering of the vandals, but what kept it from being a really great scene was most of the deaths were sanitized and cut off. The cupcake death, by the way, how cool is that to say? Cupcake death was built up amazingly, but the reveal of his face being eaten by the monster without any blood or gore just fell a little flat. The sound effects did do a lot of the heavy lifting there, which is how a lot of PG-13 horror flicks get across intense gore without actually showing it, but if Hank had found this guy already dead with his face eaten off, that would have been a much better payoff. Hank's death was also masterfully built up with the incredible reveal of the bear in the closet. I love blink and you miss it reveals because they actually make the audience question what they just saw and if it was real, putting them more on edge for the payoff. In this case, I think the payoff was better than the cupcake, but instead of just a POV camera zoom into his scream, maybe a limb could have been ripped off before cutting away. It's the same with the leader's death, with such a great build-up. I'm assuming a big part of the game is watching out for the creatures through the security monitors, which is a great horror device, by the way. But having the watchers become the watched as the animatronics look directly into camera and send the guy death on a platter in the form of a cupcake is incredible. But then it ends again with a POV zoom to the victim screaming. The creepy singing will always be a great touch, but rip a body in half before cutting away. But that is where the final death thrives, as we do actually see the full death just in shadow. Because of the previous kills, I thought it was going to cut as the hand came out, but oh my god, it came through with a big middle finger to the rating system, because technically there's no blood since it's all in shadow, but it gets the point across just as well. This reminds me a lot of Multiverse of Madness, which I know a lot of people didn't like as a Marvel movie, but I really loved as a Sam Raimi fan. Evil Dead 3 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I adored watching all the R-rated visuals in Multiverse that were tweaked just enough to make it past the censors. If you notice, in both Five Nights at Freddy's and Multiverse, there is next to no swearing and no sexual content. This gives them a bit more leeway with the MPAA to make more horror elements while keeping a PG-13. So I'm completely sick and I wanted more gore. That's one negative. The other big one, like I said before, is the script. Now, a lot of the script I think is very well done, but there's just a few things that really pull it down for me. As everyone knows, I have absolutely no knowledge of the game, aside from it being about killer animatronics. But I suspect that the massacring animatronics are what happens throughout the majority of the game. While in this one, we don't get much of that. Of course, a lot does need to be added, and they did need to find some way to get Mike to go back for all 5 nights in a row, so he couldn't know they were murderous on the first night, but we really only got one good massacre, and that is by far the best part of the movie. I thought there was going to be another one as the final fight, but there really isn't a final fight. There's a little bit of build-up with Abby hiding and Mike being attacked, but in the end, the rabbit just sort of throws Mike around a lot and Abby uses truth to defeat him. There isn't exactly a fight going on between the heroes and the villain. There's just sort of a losing really badly, then quickly winning because, hey, they're the good guys. So that's my overall pros and cons, but for the final test, is it better than Wiley's Wonderland? This is a message from my editing self. I do say Wiley's, it's actually Willie's, and I don't know why I thought it was Wiley's. I have no idea, but I say it wrong a lot right now, so I'm very sorry about that. To be honest, I overall prefer Wiley's Wonderland for the main reason that we just got a lot more animatronics going on killing sprees and the fact that Nicolas Cage can do no wrong. Even though he has 0 lines of dialogue, he is absolute badass perfection. I will acknowledge though that the overall idea of killer animatronics is the same. However, it is very different in Wiley's Wonderland since, spoilers, the animatronics aren't sympathetic at all. They're just plain evil. Like they were serial killing cannibals who satanically transferred their souls into the animatronics, and they required the neighbors to give them human sacrifices to keep them from destroying the town evil. That is quite a bit different from the plot of Five Nights at Freddy's. The movie, at least. No clue about the game. All in all, I'm glad I watched this, and I probably would recommend it to anyone who is curious. If you're a fan of the game, I'm guessing you've already watched it, and if for some miracle the algorithm has brought you here, let me know if you did like whatever changes they made. So that is it for this episode of the Uncultured Nerd Show. Please let me know if there are any other pieces of nerd media I should dive into with no context for your amusement and my education. Thank you so much, Professor and family members minus my mother, for watching, and I'll be back with something else. See y'all later!